What happens when the family that rejected you suddenly needs your help? This story will leave you speechless. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories. Nora Chen adjusted her simple black dress one last time before stepping into the opulent marble foyer of the Whitmore estate. The crystal chandelier above cast dancing shadows on her dark hair, and she felt every diamond's glint like a judgment. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, she would finally be accepted into David's family. "You must be the girlfriend," came a voice dripping with disdain. Eleanor Whitmore descended the grand staircase like a queen surveying her subjects, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her emerald gown worth more than Nora's annual salary. "David, darling, surely this is some sort of joke." Nora's heart hammered against her ribs. David's hand found hers, squeezing gently, but she could feel his palm sweating. "Mother, this is Nora. I've told you about her." "Yes, you have." Eleanor's ice-blue eyes swept over Nora with surgical precision. "The little teacher from the public school? How quaint." She paused at the bottom of the stairs, her smile sharp as a blade. "Tell me, dear, what exactly do you think you're doing here?" "I'm here because David invited me," Nora managed, her voice steadier than she felt. Around them, other family members gathered. David's father Richard, his sister Vivian, and various cousins whose names she'd tried so hard to memorize. "This is absurd," Vivian whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "David, you can't be serious about this person." Nora felt the familiar burn of tears threatening, but she refused to give them the satisfaction. She'd grown up poor, worked 3 jobs to put herself through college, and fought for every opportunity. She wouldn't crumble now. "Nora teaches at one of the most challenging schools in the city," David said, his voice gaining strength. "She's brilliant, compassionate." "She doesn't belong here," Eleanor interrupted, her voice final as a gavel. "And she never will." 5 years later, Nora stood in the same marble foyer, but everything had changed. The chandelier still sparkled, but now it illuminated moving boxes and for sale signs. Eleanor Whitmore sat in the living room, her once pristine appearance now frayed around the edges, her hands trembling slightly as she held a cup of tea. "I don't understand," Eleanor said for the 3rd time, staring at the legal documents spread across the coffee table. How could she own this? How could father leave everything to her? Nora's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Janet Morrison, adjusted her glasses. "Mrs. Whitmore, your father's will was very specific. He left his entire estate, including this house, the apartment buildings, and all investments, to Nora Chen. The will was executed legally and witnessed properly." "But she's nobody," Vivian shrieked from the doorway. "She was married to David for barely 2 years before he died. She has no right." "Actually, she has every right," Janet interrupted smoothly. "Thomas Whitmore changed his will 6 months before his death. He was very clear about his intentions." Nora stood silently by the window, watching the Whitmore family crumble. She should have felt vindicated, but instead, she felt hollow. David had been gone for 3 years now, taken by a drunk driver on a rainy Tuesday night. His grandfather, Thomas, had been the only family member who'd ever shown her kindness. "He always said Nora reminded him of his late wife," Nora whispered, remembering Thomas's gentle smile. "She came from nothing too, worked her way up. He respected that." Eleanor's teacup rattled against its saucer. "This is impossible. We'll contest it. You'll lose," Janet said firmly. "And you'll accumulate more legal fees you can't afford. I've reviewed your finances, Mrs. Whitmore. You're facing bankruptcy." The room fell silent, except for the tick of the antique grandfather clock, a clock that now belonged to Nora. The coffee shop buzzed with afternoon energy, but Nora felt disconnected from it all. She stared at the steam rising from her untouched latte, her mind racing through the implications of her new situation. Across from her, Her best friend Zoe practically vibrated with excitement. "Nora, this is incredible. You're a millionaire. You own half of downtown." Zoe's eyes sparkled with possibility. "You could travel the world, buy designer everything, show those snobs what they lost." "It doesn't feel real," Nora murmured. 3 weeks ago, I was grading papers and worrying about my rent. Now I own buildings I can't even count. So what's the problem?" Zoe leaned forward, her voice dropping. "You told me how they treated you, how they made you feel like dirt at every family gathering. They called you a gold digger, said you trapped David. Now you have the power to... To what? Be like them?" Nora's voice cracked. "David would hate this. He always said his family's money corrupted them, made them cruel." Zoe's expression softened. "David's gone, Nora, and he loved you. He'd want you to be happy, to use this opportunity." She paused, studying Nora's face. "What are you thinking?" Nora pulled out her phone, scrolling through the property listings Janet had sent. "The Whitmores are broke. They're about to lose everything, including their dignity." She stopped on a particular listing, a luxury apartment building in the heart of the city. "But what if I offered them a way out?" "You're not seriously thinking of helping them?" "I'm thinking of something else entirely," Nora said, her voice growing stronger. "Thomas owned the Meridian Tower, 60 floors of luxury apartments. It's about to go on the market because the Whitmores can't afford the mortgage payments." She looked up at Zoe, a spark of determination in her eyes. "What if I bought it myself? What if I offered them apartments there?" Zoe's jaw dropped. "You want to become their landlord?" "I want to give them a chance to learn what it means to depend on someone else's kindness," Nora said quietly. "The same chance they never gave me." The knock came at 7 p.m. sharp, just as Nora was finishing her dinner. Through the peephole, she saw Eleanor Whitmore standing in the hallway of Nora's modest apartment building, looking like a designer fish out of water. Her usual perfect composure was cracked, her designer handbag clutched like a lifeline. Nora opened the door, surprised by the older woman's appearance. Eleanor's makeup was flawless, but her eyes held a desperation Nora had never seen before. "Mrs. Whitmore," Nora said carefully, "this is unexpected. May I come in?" Eleanor's voice was strained, the imperious tone replaced by something that sounded almost like pleading. "I need to speak with you." Nora stepped aside, watching as Eleanor surveyed the small apartment with barely concealed disdain. The cramped living room, the second-hand furniture, the stack of ungraded papers on the coffee table. It was everything the Whitmores had mocked her for. "I'll be direct," Eleanor said, perching on the edge of the sofa as if afraid it might contaminate her clothes. "We need your help." "My help?" Nora sat across from her, fascinated by this role reversal. "What kind of help?" Eleanor's hands twisted in her lap. "The foreclosure proceedings begin next week. We'll lose everything. The house, our cars, our accounts are frozen. Richard's law firm is facing embezzlement charges and the legal fees." She trailed off, her composure cracking further. "I'm sorry to hear that," Nora said gently, meaning it despite everything. "But I'm not sure how I can help." "You could loan us money," Eleanor said quickly. "Just enough to keep the house, to get back on our feet. We'll pay you back with interest." "Mrs. Whitmore," Nora interrupted softly, "you don't have any way to pay me back. Your assets are gone." Eleanor's facade finally crumbled. "Please," she whispered, tears starting to fall. "I know we were horrible to you. I know we treated you terribly, but we're family, connected by David's memory. Surely that means something?" Nora felt the weight of the moment. Here was the woman who had made her feel worthless, who had questioned her worth at every turn, now begging for her help. But instead of satisfaction, she felt only sadness. "There might be another way," Nora said slowly. "I have a proposal." Nora's lawyer's office felt sterile under the fluorescent lights, a stark contrast to the emotional weight of the conversation. Eleanor, Richard, and Vivian sat across from the mahogany conference table, their faces a mixture of hope and humiliation. Nora had insisted on witnesses for this moment. "The Meridian Tower," Janet announced, sliding the documents across the table. "Nora is purchasing it outright. She's prepared to offer your family apartments there, rent-free for the first 6 months." Richard's weathered face showed the first sign of relief Nora had seen in weeks. That's very generous. What are the terms?" "The terms are simple," Nora said, her voice steady but firm. "You'll live in the building as my tenants. You'll follow all building rules, just like everyone else, and you'll work." "Work?" Vivian's voice cracked on the word. "What kind of work?" "Eleanor, you'll manage the building's concierge services. Richard, you'll handle tenant relations and maintenance coordination. Vivian, you'll work in the building's business center." Nora paused, letting the reality sink in. "You'll be employees, not owners." Eleanor's face went pale. "You want us to be staff?" "I want you to learn what it means to work for a living," Nora replied. "What it means to depend on someone else's goodwill for your home, your income, your future." "This is humiliating," Vivian whispered. "Is it more humiliating than losing everything?" Nora asked quietly. "Than living on the street?" The room fell silent. Nora could see the internal war playing out on their faces, pride versus desperation, arrogance versus survival. "There's one more condition," Nora continued. "You'll attend monthly family dinners, all of us together. We'll talk about how things are going, address any issues." She leaned forward. "And you'll treat me with the respect you'd give any landlord whose generosity is keeping you housed." Eleanor's tears had stopped, replaced by a look of grim determination. "And if we refuse?" "Then you refuse," Nora said simply. "You're free to find your own solution to your problems." Richard reached for the pen first. "Where do we sign?" As they signed the documents, Nora felt a strange mixture of emotions. This wasn't revenge. It was something more complex. It was a chance for healing, for understanding, for growth. Whether they would take it remained to be seen. The Meridian Tower gleamed in the morning sun, its glass facade reflecting the bustling city below. Nora stood in the lobby, watching the chaos of moving day unfold. The Whitmores' belongings, what little they'd been able to save, were being carried in by professional movers, a stark contrast to the lavish furniture that had once filled their estate. "Apartment 4B for the Whitmores," Nora told the building manager, Marcus, a kind-faced man who'd worked there for 15 years. "It's a 3-bedroom on the 4th floor." Marcus nodded, then lowered his voice. "Are you sure about this, Ms. Chen? Having family as tenants can be complicated." "They're not really family," Nora said, watching Eleanor direct the movers with military precision despite her obvious distress. "They made that clear years ago." Eleanor approached them, her designer clothes looking out of place among the moving boxes. "The apartment is smaller than we expected." "It's 1,200 square feet," Nora replied. "The same size as the apartment I shared with David when we were first married. The one you said was barely fit for servants." Eleanor's face flushed, but she said nothing. "Nora," a new voice called out. James Whitmore, David's cousin, emerged from the elevator with his wife Patricia. Nora's heart sank. She'd forgotten about the extended family members who'd lost money in Richard's legal troubles. "James, Patricia," Nora said coolly, "I wasn't expecting you." "We heard about your arrangement," Patricia said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How generous of you to help Eleanor's family. We were hoping you might extend the same kindness to us." "You have jobs," Nora pointed out. "James, you're a successful architect. Patricia, you run that boutique." "Had jobs," James corrected bitterly. My firm fired me when the scandal broke. Patricia's boutique closed when our investors pulled out. We're connected to the Whitmore name, which is now toxic. Nora felt a headache forming. She'd expected this. The extended family, the friends, everyone who'd ever looked down on her, now coming forward with their hands out. "I'll consider it," she said carefully. "But the same conditions apply. Work, respect, and earning your place." As the day wore on, Nora realized she'd opened a door she couldn't easily close. The Whitmore's fall from grace had created a ripple effect, and she was becoming the center of a much larger storm. 3 weeks into the new arrangement, Nora was beginning to understand the true cost of her decision. She sat in her new penthouse office, formerly Thomas's private study, reviewing the building's daily reports. The Whitmores were struggling, but not in the way she'd expected. "There's been another complaint," Marcus said, entering with a stack of papers. "Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore apparently told Mrs. Patterson in 12C that she wasn't the type of person who belonged in a luxury building." Nora sighed, rubbing her temples. "What did Mrs. Patterson say?" "That Eleanor was working as a concierge and should remember her place." Marcus winced. It got heated. Security had to intervene. Before Nora could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th Street. V." An hour later, Nora found herself facing Vivian across a small table, the younger woman's usual defiance replaced by something that looked almost like vulnerability. "I can't do this," Vivian said without preamble. "The business center job, I don't know how to do any of it. I've never had a real job. I don't know how to use the copy machine or answer phones professionally or any of it." Nora studied her former sister-in-law. Vivian had always been the most openly hostile of the family, but now she looked lost, almost childlike. "You could learn," Nora said gently. "There are training programs, online courses." "You don't understand," Vivian interrupted. "I was raised to be decorative, to marry well, to host parties, to look pretty at charity galas. I have no actual skills. I'm 28 years old and I'm useless." The admission hung in the air between them. Nora felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. She'd been so focused on the family's cruelty that she'd forgotten they were also victims of their own privilege. "What if I arranged for training?" Nora offered. "Professional development, maybe some mentoring from other staff members?" Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "Why would you help me? I was awful to you." "Because David loved you," Nora said simply, "and because everyone deserves a chance to grow." As they parted ways, Nora realized that her plan for justice was becoming something else entirely, a complex web of relationships, growth, and unexpected connections. The question was, were any of them ready for what came next? The emergency meeting in Nora's penthouse office felt like a tribunal. Eleanor sat ramrod straight, her hands folded, while Richard paced by the windows. Vivian hunched in her chair, looking miserable. Nora had called them together after receiving a disturbing call from Marcus. "Someone's been spreading rumors about me," Nora began, her voice deadly calm. "Specifically, that I'm an unfit landlord who's keeping this building as some kind of personal revenge fantasy." Eleanor's face remained impassive, but Nora caught the slight twitch of her eye. "These rumors are reaching the other tenants, the building board, even the local housing authority," Nora continued. "They're threatening the building's reputation and my ability to maintain it. That's terrible," Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," Nora agreed. "Especially since the rumors are detailed enough to include personal information about our family history. Information that only someone with intimate knowledge of our situation would know." Vivian suddenly straightened. "Mother, you didn't..." I did what I had to do, Eleanor said quietly, her mask finally dropping. This whole situation is unnatural. You're not qualified to run a building like this. You're a school teacher, for God's sake. Nora felt the familiar rage rising, but she forced herself to remain calm. You're sabotaging the building that's keeping you housed and employed. I'm trying to restore the natural order, Eleanor replied. People like us don't work for people like you. It's wrong. People like me? Nora's voice was dangerously quiet. You know what I mean, Eleanor said, her old arrogance returning. You're not one of us. You never were. David's death doesn't change that. The room fell silent. Nora could feel the weight of the moment, the crossroads they'd all arrived at. This was the heart of it. Not just classism or snobbery, but something deeper and more poisonous. You're right, Nora said finally. I'm not one of you. I'm someone who works for what she has. Someone who treats people with dignity, regardless of their bank account. Someone who honors the memory of the man we both loved by trying to be better than the hatred that consumed his family. She stood, moving to the window. But you've made your choice. You prefer destruction to growth, bitterness to healing. What does that mean? Richard asked nervously. Nora turned back to them, her decision made. It means you have 30 days to find new housing. You're evicted. Nora hadn't expected to find Vivian waiting in the lobby at 6 a.m., 2 suitcases at her feet, and tears streaming down her face. The younger woman looked up as Nora approached, her usual defiance replaced by desperation. I'm not leaving, Vivian said, her voice shaking. I know you evicted us, but I'm not going back to that life. I can't. Vivian, Nora began. I got a second job, Vivian interrupted. At the coffee shop down the street. I'm working 60 hours a week between here and there, and I'm learning. I'm becoming someone I actually like. She wiped her eyes. My mother and father, they're talking about moving to Florida to live with my aunt. They want me to come with them, to regroup and find a wealthy husband. Nora felt her resolve wavering. What do you want to do? I want to stay. I want to earn my place here, legitimately. Not because you pity me, but because I deserve it. Vivian stood, squaring her shoulders. I'll pay market rate rent. I'll work for my position in the business center. I'll prove that I can change. Before Nora could respond, Marcus appeared at her elbow. Ms. Chen, we have a problem. There's a reporter outside asking questions about the Whitmore revenge scheme. Someone's been talking to the press. Nora's blood ran cold. Through the lobby's glass doors, she could see a news van parked outside, a reporter speaking into a camera. It wasn't me, Vivian said quickly. I swear it wasn't me. I believe you, Nora said, her mind racing, but this is about to get much worse. As if summoned by her words, Eleanor appeared in the lobby, flanked by 2 people Nora didn't recognize, a woman in a sharp suit and a man with a camera. Nora, dear, Eleanor called out, her voice carrying the false sweetness that had always preceded her cruelest moments. I'd like you to meet Sarah Martinez from Channel 7 News. We're going to tell everyone about your little power trip. The pieces clicked into place. Eleanor hadn't just been spreading rumors. She'd been building a case, collecting evidence, preparing for this moment. The ultimate revenge, destroying Nora's reputation publicly. You want a war, Nora said quietly, feeling something cold and determined settle in her chest. You're about to get one. The press conference was standing room only. Nora stood at the podium in the Meridian Towers conference room, facing a sea of cameras and reporters. Behind her, displayed on a large screen, was a presentation she'd spent 3 sleepless nights preparing. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. You've heard one version of this story. Let me tell you the truth. Eleanor sat in the front row, her confidence from the morning visibly shaken. The reporter beside her was taking notes furiously. 5 years ago, I was a public school teacher earning $35,000 a year. I married David Whitmore, and his family made it clear that I didn't belong in their world. Nora clicked to the first slide, a photo of her and David at their wedding, joy radiating from both their faces. When David died, I thought I'd lost everything, but his grandfather, Thomas Whitmore, saw something in me that his own family didn't. She clicked to the next slide. Thomas's will, the relevant portions highlighted. Thomas Whitmore left me his estate not because I manipulated him, but because he believed in second chances. He believed in the American dream, that hard work and character matter more than birthright. Nora's voice grew stronger. When the Whitmore family faced financial ruin, I could have walked away. Instead, I offered them employment and housing, not as charity, but as an opportunity to learn what millions of Americans know, that dignity comes from work, not from looking down on others. She clicked again, showing the building's improved occupancy rates, the employee satisfaction scores, the community programs she'd implemented. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore has accused me of revenge. She's right, in a way. This is my revenge, showing that a nobody from a public school can run a building better than people who were born into wealth. That respect isn't inherited, it's earned. Eleanor stood abruptly, her face flushed with anger. You're destroying a family. No, Nora said quietly. I'm offering your family what you never offered me, a chance to prove their worth through their actions, not their bank account. The room erupted in questions, but Nora raised her hand for silence. I have one more announcement. The Whitmore Foundation, funded by Thomas's estate, will provide scholarships for students like I was, those who work multiple jobs to pay for school, who come from families that can't afford to give them a head start. She looked directly at Eleanor. Every scholarship recipient will be mentored by someone who's learned that true success isn't about what you're born with. It's about what you choose to become. As the press conference ended, Nora felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Vivian, tears in her eyes. I'm proud to know you, Vivian whispered. David would be proud too. Outside, the city stretched endlessly, full of people like Nora had been, working, striving, dreaming of a chance to prove themselves. She'd found her purpose, not in revenge, but in lifting others up the way Thomas had lifted her. The Whitmore name would continue, but it would mean something different now. It would mean that anyone, from anywhere, could earn their place in the world through character, determination, and the courage to be better than the bitterness that had come before. Thanks for watching this incredible story of resilience and redemption. What would you have done in Nora's situation? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Until next time, remember, your worth isn't determined by where you come from, but by who you choose to become.